Welcome to the Cutmaker Podcast Tour Championship Edition. My name is Jeff Seeley, aka Cutmaker Jeff. You can find me on Twitter at Cutmaker Jeff. Find the show on Twitter at Cutmaker Pod. My co-host today is our fearless producer Tony. Tony, we're going to keep this one short and sweet because there's not a ton to talk about this week. The way I see it, you've got three guys. You've got obviously, you got Scheffler at the top. You've got Rory. You've got Hovland. Those three guys take up about 85% of the win equity in this tournament this week. So the way I'm looking at this week is trying to get a little bit creative and making a lot of small bets. One of the things I've done is I've said, okay, like Max Homa, for example. I took Max Homa and rather than say bet Max Homa at 100 bucks at 14 to 1, which would pay 1,400 bucks, you could bet 25 bucks on Max Homa in parlaying with Scotty Scheffler. That would pay 860, which is not as good as the 14 to 1. But you parlay him with Rory, it pays 1,600. You parlay him with Hovland, it pays 2,250. And if you parlay him with Cantlay, it pays $6,375. And or versus what's that?
I like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a way better way to play this than just how than Homa, low without the starting strokes to win. So the way I've looked at it is, I've told some of our subscribers this, right? You take $500, let's say, and you make 10 $50 parlays, right? And you say, okay, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take, let's say I took, to do the same thing with Xander and those four, or even you don't have to do all four of them. You can do three of them because those three have 85% of the win equity. I think Cantlay just gives you a little bit of an out. I don't think Rahm's going to win. His form is not good. So I'm out on that. Cantlay would be the fifth highest or lowest odds. So I threw him in there, but I think that's a really good strategy. And when you look at, you make a Xander in there, Xander's going to be a little low than those Homa numbers I mentioned. You put a Russell Henley in there, he's going to be a little higher than those numbers I mentioned, a lot higher than those numbers I mentioned. You can really hit some good scores. And again, you're taking a relatively low amount of money in, let's say, 500 bucks, and the odds of you 3x in your money. Again, I'm going to use Homa Rory as an example. If you invested $500 and you've played all of these variations of these parlays and you play 10 different parlays and you hit the Homa Rory one, you made gross 3,200 bucks minus the 450 you invested, right? Okay, you're in really good shape. You're 5x your money, and you've got a lot of different outs to at least break even. So what do you think of that, Tony? And who else would you think about parlaying this week with some of those?
I like that. I like that a lot, Jeff. Just the kind of the strategy involved with where your money goes, all of that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff fascinates me. I'm, relatively new to the betting scene and all that kind of stuff. So hearing you kind of just dissect that, I tend to look at things of just like, okay, well, here's where can we get a little bit of value, kind of just the typical things you would look at. But it's really fascinating here. Some of the sharps like you and some of the other ones kind of that we've had on the show talk about just the different ways that you can play a tournament that's kind of outside of that. Just here are a couple handful of outrights, here are your DFS picks. So that's good stuff. Even just looking at some of that stuff. Yeah. I like the Patrick Cantlay play with parlaying that. Another one, maybe in that kind of who's starting in that 4-under range, Brian Harman. Maybe throw him in there. He's good at par 4 scoring. He's good at bogey avoidance. So there's some play there, some action there where maybe he can move up the leaderboard, and maybe give you a little bit of play there at one of those higher numbers.
What's interesting? Yeah, I mean, I think, I've been, I've been on Lucas Glover all these times too, right? And that's another guy who's been super hot, really hot, that you could contemplate mixing in some of that. But again, I think it's super important. You got to make sure you understand this market you're betting, tournament winner, and then tournament winner without starting stroke. So I think that's a big factor. And then, looking at matchups too, I think you've got to look tournament matchups. You got to make sure, okay, are we factoring starting strokes in? So on DraftKings, for example, all the matchups are including starting strokes. So make sure you understand that and factor that into your handicap, because it's important. It's a key component. So, but this really, I mean, this is a super unique week, Tony, right? This is not your normal, like you could even, if you wanted to, you could parlay Rory to Rory, right? I mean, he could win the he could win the tournament championship and also be the leader without stroke. So there's a lot of ways to play that thing. I just think that guys who are a little bit further down the board are going to be a little more aggressive and are going to be taking some chances that maybe guys at the top of the board won't take if they don't have to, knowing par's fine. I think there's going to be some gamble down there. And with gamble comes birdies, with gamble comes bogeys, right? So you don't know exactly how that's going to shake out. So I mean, you can see a guy get hot and shoot a good number, shoot a 63 or something out here, and shoot his way up the board. So yeah, but again, I think that's why I think it's fun to parlay some of those guys. But it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be really difficult for a guy not in the top at least 4 to win.
Yeah, from everything I've looked at this week, that's what I'm kind of hearing. Would you take any kind of flyer on a guy like a Xander Schauffele, who just has absolutely insane form at this golf course? Even though he's starting at 3 under, he's plus 2,800 right now. Would you take any kind of flyer on him at all?
I don't mind. I mean, Xander, I don't mind Xander. I mean, I played some Xander last week. I don't mind it, but again, I like parlaying him with these guys, right? I mean, I think that's just it, because I mean, even if Xander's rig gets really hot, I don't know that. I mean, I think Rory's going to play really well. I do. I flat out do. And so, listen, Xander's one of the guys I've said, like, I think Xander's a really good parlay with Rory this week.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because I could easily see a scenario where Rory is 12 under for the week and Xander's 15 under for the week, and Rory wins the event, but Xander wins the low without starting strokes, because he just can't make up the 4 strokes on Rory. I mean, making up a stroke around on Rory at this course is going to be tough to do.
Yeah, and
I think I guess Hovland's obviously there. Hovland's been playing white hot. Scheffler, his ball striking is elite. His putting is just dreadful. I mean, he has lost an average of 3 strokes putting over his last 8 events. I mean, it's insane. Unbelievable. the struggle he's had. So, yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking at something here. I'm curious. I'm going to see what the I'm going to look at some scores here. So here we go. So, like, I'm just going to take 2020, for example. I'm looking at what some of the low scores here. So there's some 64s. So 64 is the low. But so the winning score in 2020 was 11 under. The winning score in 21 was 11 under. That was Cantlay. Wait a second. Is this right? No, Cantlay won, but I'm sorry, the low score was Rahm, but Cantlay won. I'm with you. Okay. So 14 under was the low without strokes. Yeah, that must have been the low without strokes. And so, God, John Rahm, Kevin Nuss. So guys are going to shoot between 11 and 15 under. I'm going to say, let me see what happened last year. No, Rory won. God, Rory was 17 under last year.
He started off last year with a triple bogey, if you remember.
Yeah. He shot a 63 here in round 3 last year, which is obviously the low. And it's funny. You know who finished 7th in this thing last year? Sepp Straka.
There you go.
It is amazing. That dude every week has one really low round.
Yeah.
And one really low round. So I'm looking at this. So last year he was 68, 68, 64, 68. This past week he was on Sunday. I mean, he has one low round in him every week. I feel like Straka's a guy you could almost like play him in a matchup, every round. And if you don't win, just double your bet and keep doubling it through the weekend, because eventually Straka's going to have that low round. I mean, he 64 for, gosh, he had the second lowest round of the tournament. No, Hideki had a 63. So yeah, I mean, so 63s are out there, right? So somebody can shoot a 63. That's 7 under scores are going to be, gosh, I mean, if I'm saying between 10 and 17, that's a big range. But 17's out there. Rory got there. Xander got to 12. Sanjay got to 16. So again, my point being, it's going to be hard to beat Rory with having to run down 4 shots of Rory. Like I just don't see it happening. I really don't.
And the difference between a payout from the guy who finishes 30th and the guy who finishes 11th is, only $450,000. So I feel like a guy like Sepp, where what good reason is there for him to not go out Thursday morning, maybe aside from fatigue and trying to keep it up for 4 days, and just go out firing at pins all 4 rounds? Because
what's the difference between 5th and 6th?
5th and 6th, $500K, $3 million.
Exactly. That's my point. That's the point, right? It's like you're trying to get up there. You're trying to go low as well. I mean, not that you're not trying to go low every week, but you're exactly right. The difference between 30th and 14th doesn't really matter. It's if you can tie together a couple of really good rounds and go super low and get yourself inside the top 10, that it's going to be a little more relevant. So again, here's from my quote. I guess my official pick to win is going to be Rory. But then from there, I think it's really fun to look at some good parlay options. I mean, Max Homa was 15 under here last year. I mean, Sanjay's form is not any good. Otherwise, he'd be in conversation for me. But gosh, I mean, a lot of guys shot 10 under. A lot of guys shot 10 under. 10 to 16 was super common. 2 or 10 to 17 even. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. 15 guys were at least 10 under last year. That's half the field.
Scoring's there if you want it.
Yeah. And I guess obviously the weather is going to, depend on the weather some. But if scoring's easy, boy, they're gonna get after it. I mean, 2 years ago it was average, but still a bunch of guys. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 guys finished 10 under better 2 years ago. So I think the way to play this is pretty straightforward. You play pick your winner, whether it's Hovland, whether it's Rory, whether it's Cantlay if you want, whether it's Scheffler, and then you parlay some of these other guys with them. That's the way to play it. Really, really simply. I've sent out all my stuff on our site. All that stuff's up. We're also doing some football this week. I've got week 1 college football plays up, and then for everybody's doing fantasy football, I put out my top 150 rankings for half point PPR drafts. That's what I'm getting ready for. A whole bunch of my drafts here coming up. So I took my sheet that I've spent a while building and put it on there for those who are interested in that. So check that out as well on the site. And we'll have we'll continue obviously with the golf throughout the swing season, a lot of good golf. Then we'll mix in with a lot of good football content, doing some contests to Survivor this week. I'm working on a big Survivor sheet now that I'm doing with some friends as well. So we'll have Survivor content, all kinds of good content throughout the rest of the year. So it's going to be a fun fall, going to be a fun football season / swing season there, Tony.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's kind of a weird, it's been a weird, 2 years in the golf world. But now we're going into this fall season that is just kind of there. It doesn't count to last year. It doesn't count towards next year. So, I guess the PGA Tour really playing into the gamblers and everybody. So they know that they've got the audience there. But yeah, with NFL coming up, obviously football is king. So cool to be dipping into that a bit.
We'll be doing it all. Well, guys, thanks for listening. Again, check out at cutmakerpod.com to get everything we do all weekend long. Again, follow us on Twitter at cutmakerjeff and at cutmakerpod. And we'll talk next week. Thanks, everybody.